All right, welcome to episode 6 of the Property Prescription with Tony and Phil. How are you, Tony?
Good. I really like it when you say the name Property Prescription. Actually, I've got a tongue tie. Great name, I think.
Who came up with that name? I think someone in this room. Yeah, I thought it was a great name. I think you and I settled on it very quickly, didn't we?
As soon as we heard it was like PP, perfect. Yeah. In performance property, it just works.
You just did it on
rolls
purpose.
Off the tongue.
I was just like, well done. Yeah, good. All right. Well, what do you want to talk about today?
So, previously we did mention, and this is close to my heart. I still like to think I'm relatively young, getting to middle age now. My kids are young for sure, but it's funny. It's just a slight tangent. I'm not sure you get this, but I always think of myself as being in my 20s. So ever since I became maybe 25, in my head I've just never left that age. So where I work, I've got a lot of early 20s people, kids, essentially. They look like kids. And I talk to them, but I forget they're not my age. I just like, everyone's the same age. And then I'm like, oh, shit, I'm 40. Oh, I'm about to turn 40. I mean, it's not that old, but I just forget that I'm not in my 20s anymore. I'm not sure if you feel...
Yeah, I definitely get the same. I've had imposter syndrome, ever since I still feel 25 to 30. And you're talking to people, I can gladly have a conversation with a 20-year-old and say, yep, I'm on their level. There's a few abbreviations now your age is starting to creep in. Was it bra? Did they say bra?
No, bra's old now, man.
Bra's older?
Yeah.
Yeah?
No, hey, here's a word. Here's my favorite word. In fact, this word is out of fashion already. My favorite word is coogee.
Coogee?
Coogee?
What's that mean? What does it mean?
It means someone who's a millennial, like us, that is kind of uncool.
Right. It's definitely me.
Like socks that you pull down. You know how we have to push our socks down?
Yes.
Or skinny jeans. That's coogee.
Yeah,
it's
right.
It's like we think it's cool because we're millennials, but it's not cool anymore. Now it's all baggy pants and baggy tops.
So the white T-shirt with a shirt over the top, it's all gone.
It's all gone. So millennials are old now, and I thought we were the young people. Anyway, let's go back.
Off topic.
Question I had was for young people like myself, who are here in my mid-20s, especially the doctors. So when we finish training, you're about 23, 24, if you came straight out of high school. If not, you did sort of post-grad, 27, 28. You're still in your 20s. The first year, you might be making $80,000, $90,000, $100,000. Not bad in the scheme of things, but there's not a lot of money to play with. And as you go on as the junior doctor, you probably get to 150, probably peak at about 200,000. And
you do.
This is probably working decent hours as well, because you do get paid. Hopefully, you get paid your overtime. But we're not talking about crazy salaries. Surgeons can make 7 figures, but you're not really going to get there until you become a consultant. That could take at least 10, probably looking at 15 to 20 years. So for those younger doctors who are somewhat limited by both their time and the money they have, what kind of advice do you have? Like, what is, and you say yourself that you don't want people to make mistakes. What are some of the mistakes? In fact, I'm going to make it easy for you. What are the top 3 mistakes that people make, that young people make, that you don't want to see?
I think when I see kind of a young doctor going and buying a expensive car, like that is just a no. And name brand clothing, you don't need that sort of stuff in your life. They need to eat out. They need to enjoy. They need to enjoy what they eat. What really frustrates me, Uber Eats. They are on Uber Eats, 24/7 because of their working lives. They're stressed. So you accumulate all those costs, your weekly costs. So just set a budget at an early age. I think traveling is super important to whether or not they're a doctor or any human being in life should have that ability to travel the world, experience, put themselves outside of their comfort zone. And I think a lot of those life lessons come from traveling, I find, or different experiences, working early, getting a job as early as you possibly can, actually recognizing the value of $1. I find that if you don't recognize what $1 represents, you don't appreciate money at an early stage. So I think it's really important that the value of the dollar and where that particularly can go and where it's spent at an early age, learning about debt, that is number one. I think you're young. You should be able to take a lot of risks in your early stages of your life, but take calculated risks, and learn about compounding growth. What is compounding growth? What is it? How does it work? That ability to invest in something, and while you're asleep, you've got something in the background working for you at an early age is really important. So with our younger doctors, I see a lot of unnecessary spending on materialistic items. Materialistic items will only get you happy for a certain point. But I find if you can have a certain percentage of your salary, and when I'm speaking to a young doctor, I say, even if it's 10% or 20% of your salary, utilize that to go and put into a savings account and go and invest in anything, whether it's, even if they want to go and invest in an ETF, or doesn't necessarily have to be property, but have something that is working for you in the background at the earliest age you possibly can do.
I'm actually going to cut in so I'm going to give you some personal experience. I think previously in one of the earlier podcasts, I did mention I bought an expensive car.
You did.
So in hindsight, it was a terrible decision. And even at the time, I knew it was probably a bad decision. And my girlfriend at the time, who's my wife now, she had no interest in cars. And then one time she actually walked into the wrong car because she walked into a Corolla, and I had like an Audi like RS5.
Oh, wow.
It was completely different. And she was like, can't tell the difference. They're all just black cars. So that was pretty funny how for people who don't care, then it really is just something to drive you from A to B. But I did care. But I realized very quickly that that was an extremely depreciating asset. I lost so much money very quickly, money I didn't really have. And then there's that opportunity cost that you lose. The traveling point is true. I mean, I help run frequent flying doctors, and that you see how much more people enjoy that experience, because it's something that you take with you for the rest of your life, that experience. So I, again, definitely spend more on getting experiences and getting the traveling. And I think I wrote I thought it was pretty funny piece on this investment forum. 50 years from now, and you're old man, and now you have this magic time travel portal where you can send money back and forth between your younger self. And I wrote that in this hypothetical situation, I've become relatively wealthy because now a house in Parramatta cost $100 million that I bought 50 years ago. And I'm like, hey, I'm going to help my 20-year-old. I'm going to send money back. And then what ends up happening is money started traveling this way, where my 20-year-old is sending money to my older self. I'm like, no, you're sending the money the wrong way. I actually want to send the money the other way. What I was trying to say is, yes, you do want to invest in your future, but there's also, you want to spend a little bit of money on yourself for the experiences.
I think in life, like you're a young doctor, you are studying, you are doing silly hours, even when your traineeship, when your training finishes, you're often overworked, you're stressed, and that leads often into kind of questionable decisions around how you spend that money. So if you can get a mentor, and whether or not it's property or someone that can teach you about financial literacy, I think that is so important at the earliest age. The younger you are, the better. Within all of our families, we should be having a discussion over the family table. What does a dollar represent? What is the value of a dollar? And I think the financial literacy during, through high schools, through universities, there's nothing there at the moment. So my best advice to a young doctor is to travel, but utilize 20 to 30% of your income to start saving. The earlier you start saving, I think later on in life, it creates discipline. And a lot of our doctors don't have discipline. They tend to spend more than they earn. So never spend more than you earn. I think it's a common occurrence. It's a very simple statement. But a lot of doctors, they get larger credit card bills, or, they're spending a lot more. It only buys you a certain amount of happiness, these materialistic items.
See, ironically, doctors are probably some of the worst people with money.
Yes.
What you have is they're very intelligent in their field, and they're so they become, I'm not going to say arrogant, but they know they're good at what they do, which they are. And what ends up happening is you kind of have a false confidence in your ability. And we've never been educated on money. Like you said, we spend all our time studying the human body. And once you've done all that hard work and you actually start making a bit of money, you're like, hey, it's my time to enjoy it. Right. But most doctors, unless you're at a business, we earn good money, but we're not going to be earning crazy amount of money where you can spend it on whatever you want. Yeah. You still need to budget. So having this idea where, hey, I'm actually smart, so therefore whatever I do is correct, is completely incorrect. And this is where someone like yourself or someone who provides a little bit of guidance would come in. Just more specifically, so you said 20 to 30%. So let's say it's a junior doctor, $100,000 after tax, I don't know, 70, 80. As you mentioned, houses in, let's say, Sydney, you're paying $800 for rent.
Correct.
Like, how does that work? So what do you recommend here?
So share house accommodation, number one, move out of Sydney is the next one. But if they're in Sydney, ideally, and they're on that particular sort of wage, they need to be saving $10,000 to $15,000 a year of that income that goes into investments. So whether it goes into an ETF, but to buy a $500,000 investment property, in an area outside of Sydney, sometimes it makes more sense for them to rent invest for a 5 to 7 year period until they build enough deposit to go and buy their first home. So a lot of our young doctors, they all rent invest. And I think it's a common theme that a lot of our, not just doctors, but, young academics starting out, they need $50,000 to $100,000 to get started. If you don't have that, then you need to find other investments to kind of help you to get to that minimum point. But if it's a forced saving, the thing about property, it forces you to save because your repayments are X amount per month, every month. So you often, when I was 18, I bought my first property. It was, I was earning less than, say, $40,000 a year, but it creates that discipline at a very early age. So these are, it's the discipline, it's the accountability, it's doing, basically knowing that you've got that amount of mortgage coming out of that investment property each month that you need to meet. It just, it creates that continuity in terms of making sure that, and it sets you up for later in life. So if you're disciplined with your money at an early age, you'll be very, very successful later in life.
I think my wife actually said the same thing. I was talking to my wife. I was looking at our savings. I'm like, I'm making good money. Where's our savings going? It's all going to the mortgage.
Yeah.
And I'm like, well, we're not saving anything. She said, no, that's forced savings. That's what she said. What you said.
Yeah.
It's literally we're putting money into an asset, and that's an asset that's probably going to grow. So it's actually a good thing. Yeah. Because otherwise we just spend it on frivolous cars.
But if you're paying, if you're basically paying too much non-deductible debt on your home, maybe that, that salary or that wage could be going to building out your investment portfolios where that is tax deductible. You get a tax refund and use your tax refund to pay down the debt on the family home. So there's better ways of spending that.
Yeah, and then just going slightly back to the rent vesting. Obviously, you're not going to be able to afford a really great house. You're not going to buy a forever house when you're young. You don't have the wage. You don't have the deposit. So why is it better? Is it because of the rent? Like, if you can actually afford to rent where you want to live because the rent is so much.
Yeah. So with a lot of our Sydney doctors, for example, they can't afford to buy in the suburb that they want to live in.
What kind of numbers are we looking at? So let's say it's a $1 million house. How much would that?
Yeah. So let's look at Coogee, Coogee or Maroubra or Bondi Beach. You want to go and buy, a young doctor starting out to buy bought a number of older style units in Bondi 15 years ago, just after the GFC. A unit now in Bondi, 1 bedroom, with not even a beach view, is going to cost you about $1.4 to $1.5 million.
Right.
You're a young doctor on $80,000.
Not going to happen.
It's not going to happen unless you've got some rich folks or money coming from different sources. It's just not going to happen. So to rent a 1 bedroom unit in Bondi, maybe with two people, if you're a couple, it's going to cost you $350 to $400 each for that $800 unit, okay? So there's a lot of share house. A lot of our doctors live in share houses. Initially, they start off and they go and buy these investment properties. They build up their growth, usually need 2, and that amount of money is kind of tax deductible, so obviously it's a deductible expense, and they get a good tax refund every year, and then they just continue that process until they have a $500,000 to $700,000 deposit to go and buy that $1.5 million home.
Right.
And by then they've probably changed. They move up to Brisbane, or they're relocated to a different hospital. So it's a very common occurrence, and I think rent investing is a great strategy for young doctors starting out. But, for some of our doctors in Melbourne that want to go and buy something for $1 million, I think the cost of a unit right now in Melbourne, I'd be suggesting they look to go and buy and move into a unit themselves, because what it's going to cost you to rent versus buy, it's probably cheaper to actually go and buy the unit right now. And that you can buy good quality units in Melbourne for $600,000, $700,000 in Elwood, Brunswick, city fringe, within 5 kilometres to the CBD or their hospital. So depending on where they live and how much it's going to cost to reside in that area, rent versus buy, when we're talking to a doctor, we assess that for them.
That's a good point, because obviously Sydney's completely out of the equation.
Well, Sydney's a no-brainer. Sydney's straightforward. Melbourne, on the other hand, it's probably better off that they actually go and buy rather than rent.
And somewhere like really tight, like Perth, you may not even able to get a rental.
Well, Perth at the moment, I would be strongly advising our young doctors that are on the ground, if they have capacity to go and buy something sub 1 mil, is going to be the best sort of growth-focused asset over the next 2 to 3 years, looking at our data. So we've given some of our IP away. But if I was a young doctor starting out and I had capacity to go and buy something sub 1 mil, and it can be a little townhouse or a unit, from a growth point of view, I think it's going to perform very, very strongly over the next 2 to 3 years.
Yeah.
Because the pricing of housing has gone on such a significant run. Houses have almost doubled over the last 4 to 6 years in Perth. So if you bought a house in East Vic Park for $700,000, it's worth 1.4. Como, North Perth, next to the hospital, a lot of our doctors are, that North Perth little precinct, they've all doubled. West Leaderville, they've all done well. So buy the entry-level stock. So it's a great time for a young doctor to be buying their first home in Perth, if they're located.
Because I was just in WA, and I was speaking to some of the doctors, they were also worried that there's just so little on the rental market.
Correct.
That they have to buy.
And look, to just rent out a 3-bedroom property in Perth, it's going to cost you $1,000, $1,200 a week.
Yeah, that's...
So it's actually cheaper to buy than rent.
Yeah, it's crazy. So just to summarize, I think if you are a young person, and this is probably applies to everybody, you got to make sure you have that understanding of how money works and debt works. And there's a lot of resources out there, but I think don't make the mistake I did, because I bought a fancy car when I was 25, which really, I think, set me back 5 years. But I had a good few months with the car, so that was okay. And like you said, I was only happy for a few months. Yeah. But it was a good lesson. But with the spend money on experiences, spend money with your family and friends. I know I'm not super old, but that's what I found where my joy is, and where I look back, I'm like, oh, those are the times I actually remember. I don't remember a lot of times with my car. Yeah. I remember selling it, which I was very happy about. Yeah. It's like, what's that quote about having a boat? Happiest day, 2 happiest days is the day you buy and day you sell it.
Correct.
Same thing that was with my car. And your other advice is, obviously it's going to be difficult for young people to buy the house they want, so investing is a serious consideration in places like Sydney, but in Melbourne or Perth, or maybe in other locations, depending on where you live.
So if you're in Darwin and you're in Perth and you're looking to buy your first home, I'd strongly advise that you go and look to buy your first home. Whereas if you're in Sydney, rent invest. If you're in Brisbane, it's a bit of a 50-50 mix based on where you're living. And in Melbourne's a no-brainer to be buying your own. Buy it. Just go for it.
Perfect. That's some really succinct, great advice. Just one last point. This podcast we're doing, I do love educating and I love learning as well, so I'm learning a lot from you as well. One thing that I would like to do, and Phil agrees with me on this, is we want to give back to the community.
Absolutely.
And so on Freaking Flying Doctors, I organise a lot of charitable stuff. A couple of years ago, I shaved my head for Canteen, which is a charity that deals with cancer for kids. And that raised $25,000, which was pretty good. With this book that I'm selling right now, I'm hoping to raise $50,000, and that goes to the charity that I mentioned in two episodes ago. So I'm hoping that whatever proceeds, if we have any clients that we get from this, we can donate some of that, if not all of it, to...
Yeah, so if you've come from the podcast or are obviously interested in utilising our services, if you note that down on our inquiry form, when you fill out that inquiry form as a doctor on our website, we'll donate a certain percentage to the charities of your choice, Tony. You've got some great charities there.
Yeah, and we'll see if anyone listening to it think they have a good charity they can recommend us. We'd love to hear about it as well. And we were mentioning just before we go that the reason we're doing this, the reason I'm doing this, personal reasons, is that I feel like online these days, so much of public discourse has become so aggressive and negative, and people are no longer kind to each other. And I'm in a very fortunate position where I have a good job, and I want to do my bit to try and bring back some of that kindness and bring back the idea of and value of sharing.
Absolutely.
Where if I can get, and this is going to sound really arrogant because, just because I'm doing it, but I'm hoping that other people will follow suit. Like we're paying it forward.
Pay it forward. Absolutely.
We're making this to be something that's not extraordinary. That's something that everyone does. So, and we're not just talking about charity. If you don't have money to donate to charity, we're not saying that you should do that. We're saying just being kind and generous is something that we all kind of miss these days, especially with the online discourse that has become so toxic and it's bleeding to real world.
Yeah, unfortunately, social media is a big, in terms of it's creating a lot of negativity and, trying to keep up with the Joneses, and just even that little bit of kindness in a person in terms of what you say or what you do can go a long way. So, yeah, I think it's great initiative.
Thank you. That was brilliant.
Thanks
Thanks
Tony.
Phil.
Excellent.